This post presents a concept for a new sort of charity. It aims to raise the incomes of those who work in low-wage, service sector jobs, and at the same time to create new jobs for unemployed panhandlers. Very few companies in the fast food sector allow their employees to collect tips. Tip jars are banned. As they see it, if customers feel obliged to tip employees, they'll perceive a higher cost in patronizing the establishment, and this in turn would cut into company profits. Employees be damned. Let them toil away for a minimum wage. I think that most people are well aware of how underpaid fast food sector employees are, how hard they work, and contrary to what their employers might think, many believe that these employees are entitled to tips for quality service. If some asshole company insists on denying its employees the opportunity to collect tips inside of its establishments, then someone should start a charity that arranges to collect tips on behalf of employees outside of these establishments on public property. So how would this work? After registering as a charity, you'd hit the streets looking for professional panhandlers, beggars if you will. You'd offer them a fair hourly wage to stand outside of busy fast food joints and the like with tip collection boxes. Where necessary, you could polish them up a bit, toss them in a bath, give them a clean shave. Anyway, once recruited, this workforce of panhandlers would be outfitted with uniforms, charitable credentials, locked and sealed tip collection boxes, and signage. And the signage might say stuff like, a McDonald's wage is a poverty wage, leave a tip to acknowledge hard work and good service. The charity would pay each panhandler a wage out of the tips collected, and the balance would go to employees. I think that outside of a busy downtown McDonald's, say, a panhandler, a professional tip collector, that is to say, could easily earn his or her hourly wage in 5 minutes, with the balance of tips collected over the course of an hour going to employees. Now, rather than allocating these tips on a day-to-day basis, it seems to me that the charity could accumulate tips in trust over the course of a pay cycle, and then make lump sum direct deposits to enrolled employees. To receive a share of the tips collected, an employee would be required to submit his or her pay stubs to the charity at the end of each pay cycle. Based upon all pay stubs submitted, the charity would calculate total hours worked within the establishment over the course of the pay cycle. Employees would then receive a share of tips equal to their share of total hours worked. So, full participation would definitely be encouraged, and all employees could be expected to submit electronic copies of their pay stubs to the charity in order to receive a share of the tips collected each pay cycle. I think that an outside charity would be necessary to make this sort of tip collection scheme viable. Employees at these sorts of joints would be too terrified to organize this sort of scheme, simply too afraid to anger management. And beyond this, the logistics of compensating tip collectors and of fairly allocating tips across an entire workforce would require a certain degree of bureaucratic capacity. And that's what the self-financing charity I'm proposing will offer. Faced with this sort of charitable tip-collecting activity outside of their establishments, retailers like McDonald's or Subway or KFC might choose to change their policies on tip collection within their establishments, if only to rid themselves of negative PR outside of their establishments. The end result would be the same: better pay for the most underpaid hard workers in our society.